Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Mary Jane and I are so happy that you're here. A little introduction about me for those of you who don't know me, many of you do here, but also for people who might be watching um, the recording on our YouTube channel. I am Jan Jeremias. I'm one of the co-hosts of this time. And a little bit about me personally, I've spent over 30 years involved in health in one way or another. And for the past 20, I've blended my clinical research roots with a love for holistic wellness to support both people and their pets in living longer, fuller lives. I find great joy in helping others see the whole picture of their well-being physically, mentally, and emotionally, and turning that into a simple, meaningful blueprint for health. I'm deeply moved by creativity and connection, and I'm so grateful to share this path with my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane. We believe in bringing kindness into the world, one creative project, one breath, one conversation at a time. So, a heartfelt thank you to you, Mary Jane, and a big thank you to every one of you for showing up today and always being there. This community shines because of you. And so, Mary Jane, I'll pass it to you. And you're beautiful and your beautifulness.
Thank you, Jan. You're so kind. Um, Hey everyone, I am Mary Jane, or MJ, as I'm known in some circles, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. Of course, as Jan was mentioning, it's because of you that this community shines and continues to grow. So we are very grateful for you being here. For those that are new or may not know who I am, but I'm sure a lot of you here do. But I'm just would like to share that I am the founder of MJ McQueen Creative Studio, where I help heart-centered entrepreneurs to really step into their light, find their voice, and share their gifts in a way that feels true and authentic. Because we know when we're connected to who we really are, that's when the real magic happens. And that's when we truly connect with others. And always, I am honored to be here with all of you. And of course, my beautiful friend, Jan Jeremias, who shines brightly every day. And I love the way this community has grown, that we're growing together. And it really does feel like we're weaving a beautiful tapestry with vibrant threads of the creativity, love, and light. And we thank you truly for being part of Spirit Born Imaginings.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Should we share the first poem?
Sure. Sorry, I had to I had to cough for a moment. The poem today is called Action and Non-Action, and it's actually attributed to Thomas Merton. It's a translation of an ancient text. So it reads, "The non-action of the wise man is not inaction. It is not studied, it is not shaken by anything. The sage is quiet because he is not moved, not because he wills to be quiet. Still water is like glass. You can look at it and see the bristles on your chin. It is a perfect level. A carpenter would use it. If water is so clear, so level, how much more the spirit of man? The heart of the wise man is tranquil. It is the mirror of heaven and earth, the glass of everything. Emptiness, stillness, tranquility, tastelessness, silence, non action. This is the level of heaven and earth. This is the Tao. Wise men find here their resting place. Resting, they are empty. From emptiness comes the unconditioned. From this, the conditioned, the individual things. So from the sage's emptiness, stillness arises. From stillness, action. From action, attainment. From their stillness comes their non action, which is also action, and is, therefore, their attainment. For stillness is joy. Joy is free from care, fruitful in long years. Joy does all things without concern, for emptiness, stillness, tranquility, tastelessness, silence, and non action are the root of all things.
Thank you so much, Mary Jane, for sharing our great poem. So, welcome everyone to In Stillness We Move, the subtle art of non-action. We welcome you just as you are into this space of reflection, softness, and presence. A space where stillness is not a void, but a living, breathing rhythm that speaks quietly beneath the noise of our daily lives. So often, the world around us calls for motion, more doing, more fixing, more striving. We're taught that value comes from productivity, that progress demands effort. Yet somewhere within us, there's a whisper that knows the opposite can also be true, that in stillness, we move, that resting in awareness, pausing before reacting, or simply allowing what is, can hold as much transformative power as any great action. Non action is not indifference, it is not apathy or avoidance. Rather, it is the art of conscious non doing, an act of trust. It invites us to listen deeply, to let life guide us rather than wrestle it into submission. It asks us to soften our grip on control, to stop pushing the river, and instead flow with it. This is the wisdom of the Tao, of Wu Wei, effortless alignment with the natural order of things. It is the knowing that when we release the need to manage, we often find ourselves guided more clearly. It is the understanding that presence is more useful than pressure, and that every pause can hold the seed of clarity and renewal. So as we gather here, may we honor the spaces between our breaths, the gentle still points that give meaning to motion. May we remember that every great shift, every act of creation begins first with stillness, with the simple willingness to be, even if just for a moment. We welcome you to this shared exploration, the journey inward and outward. Together, may we discover what it means to act from alignment rather than urgency, to live from presence rather than pressure, and to allow the rhythm of life to move through us rather than by us. Welcome home to stillness, to truth, and to the quiet power of non-action.
I really love that reflection, and Jan, that was awesome. I It's amazing, isn't it? How how it takes a relearning of sorts to realize that, that inaction, that we don't have to always be moving. We're always doing. And that's something that's been recurring in my observation over and over again in recent times. It's like just realizing that sometimes we just need to be in order to absorb, to take in, to sort of let our next steps unfold. And it's definitely not an easy thing to do sometimes because, that inner voice, the ego wants to tell us that we must always be moving in order to be productive and moving forward. But sometimes moving forward requires being still.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mary Jane, for sharing that. And it's really an interesting thing to kind of ponder because I do think we look at it as passivity of sort of like this resignation, laziness if we're not moving, and then all of a sudden to realize that this is a conscious, like non-moving. This is an awareness of making a choice to not act. It's not passive in so many ways. I mean, if anything, it's totally the opposite of passivity. It's a conscious awakening that, I'm not taking action. And I remember the first time I actually came across this concept. Um, we were reading as a group the Bhagavad Gita, and there's a point where Arjuna, the warrior, is getting ready to battle, and he's battling against his relatives, like his cousins and his brothers. I mean, it's a war among, different people, but some of the people that he's actually standing opposite are actually people that he grew up with. And he feels very like conflicted. And Krishna, his higher self, is speaking to him and says to him, he says, I don't know that I can fight. I don't know if I can take action. And he says, just remember, non-action is also action. And all of a sudden it was like this realization of like, oh, like just because I don't act, if I'm consciously not acting, it's still action. And that was the first time I think I ever came across it and thought about it. And I think in our busy lives, sometimes it's very hard to do that because we get pulled in, or sucked in is a better way for me to pull it. Sometimes it feels like you're just on this roller coaster and you just keep on going, and momentum is just driving you. And and can you push pause, or can you stop for a moment or a breath and just step back out of it for a moment before you get pulled into the whirlwind of whatever's going on. And I'm not saying that, there are times when that conscious, like not like you're not sitting there and pausing and, for hours in a day. Things happen and you've got to shift and you've got to act. But still there are those actual points in your life where you can actually really see it and recognize that I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to act quickly, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that's so true, Jen. I was just thinking as you were speaking that about that, and it's really about just with discernment, making a decision with discernment. Um, when is the time to act, and when is the time to rest? Because I mean, rest or inaction is also important as far as our own mental well-being, etc. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, as you mentioned, it's not about being passive. Um, it's really inviting in, some peace and some harmony and letting the flow happen as it is happening. But yes, it's such an interesting concept, and it's often hard to do in some sense, but it's also a very important thing to do, and also to let go of that um, self-criticism when we do pause, because we need that even as human beings, as they say, not human doings. We need that pause in order to reflect and to sort of tune in to what's happening rather than just react. So it's kind of in the sense of being proactive versus being reactive.
Mm, absolutely. I love that. And I'm just looking at some of the notes, and there was this guy is writing, and he's actually quite funny because he's actually talking about how hard it is in that moments. Like he's still, trying to practice this whole embodiment of like, you know, basically actively non-acting. And so he says, he says, I fail every day, but I keep and forget, but I'll keep trying. And he says, so I'll keep trying, ironically, to let go of trying. So it just made me laugh because I think it is like an awareness that we have because the ego is so strong. And life, and our experiences in life basically um, we measure our success by doing and, productivity by doing. And it's so counter, you know, sort of counter what we're trained and we're kind of brainwashed to think that we must be doing all the time. Right. And so it's like, so I'll be with this guy who wrote this wonderful article and I'll keep trying to let go of trying.
It's oh so true. I'll keep trying to let go of trying. I love that.
Oh, gosh. And to realize, and I think we often mention this, to realize, like to actually laugh at yourself when you can see yourself getting pulled in. It's like this moment of, all of a sudden, even if you get pulled in and then you have this like kind of moment of like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? And actually, like here I am again in this kind of like it's pulling me in. And to step away and to actually find humor in it, it's like, okay, I really don't have to try so hard. And how often we do that? We try so hard or we force so much, and then nothing unfolds. We try to control so much in a situation, so much in our lives, that all of a sudden there's no room for flow.
That's a beautiful thought. Just to being, of course, just being the visual person that I am, it's just not allowing room for flow. Yes, if we're constantly putting up the dams and constantly building, 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 and not giving a chance for the thoughts to flow, giving yourselves the grace of having that opportunity for non-action. Um, it's it's not a good thing for us in for many aspects for sure.
I think it also requires this element of patience. Like, we have to sit there, do something, step back, see if it works. But I
Yes.
think as a culture or as a society, we've become so impatient. We're so used to things happening or getting things instantaneously.
True.
You know, from, Amazon getting it the same day to other things. And I think what ends up happening is we don't have the patience that we need to allow things to unfold. So there is no natural flow that happens. You act and then something can like whatever, if you want to say the universe or God or some divine entity kind of gathers in and kind of supports that or doesn't. But we don't allow the space for that either. And so all of a sudden we immediately jump into, okay, well, what do I need to do next?
Hmm. That's
What's next on the to-do list, Darlene? So have
yes.
to throw
What's
that in whenever I can.
it's come up a few times in recent things we've been doing, hasn't it? Even our workshop last weekend.
It did. It did. Yes, it did. Zara, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, I kind of like had a question really. You mentioned patience and flow and allowing things to just take their natural course. Um, I read this book called Silence is Key by Ryan Holiday. I mean, I only read like the first two parts of that the book. And this was at the beginning of COVID when I was feeling really overwhelmed. And I reached out to an old colleague of mine and he said, you need to read this book. Like a lot of things are going to fall into place. I was like, okay. So I started reading this book. And then I somehow found Mind Valley. And it was about sitting like for quite a few minutes a day just trying to focus and be quiet and not think and not try. Well, it's really difficult not to think in my case, but just sit there. Just sit there and just say nothing, do nothing. And the longer I did it the easier it became. I think it took me something like 2 months to get into the whole practice, to the point that I got pretty good at it, that within 2 minutes I could almost like switch my mindset. And I found that that's when I became quite creative, actually. I just started writing. I was just writing every single day. And what I wrote, I would just share to LinkedIn. This is like going back 5 years ago. And everybody was like, wow, wow, like, what are you going to write tomorrow? Like, I've never thought about it like this. It did bring out a very different side of me as opposed to that whole doing thing. And I think it helped a lot of people question like a lot of definitions and just things we'd accepted pre-COVID, like things like what is success or like when is enough enough or like what is happiness? Like there were some really, really deep topics, but going back to patience, I mean, I know mine took 2 months before it, got down to 2 minutes, but how long would you say is enough? I know how long is a piece of string. If you want to sort of work on getting a group of people together to collaborate, to step forward, to take it to the next stage. I mean, I'm into 8 weeks on this program. How long, Jan, how long, Mary Jane, would you say patience would be required in this case?
I
My
mean,
first,
go ahead, Mary Jane, and
I
then
was
I'll
going to
chime
say
in.
my first reaction is forever, but
Yeah.
because human beings are human beings, and everyone moves forward and sort of progresses at their own state. But hopefully, hopefully, hopefully you have a group of people that actually at some point there's a breakthrough and they move together and it brings the other ones along until they're in that state to be able to move forward. But yeah, I don't know. Patience seems to is an ongoing thing, absolutely. Um, and it's definitely a lesson that I've had to learn over and over again. I don't know about you, how, Jan?
Yeah, I do think, and I think that there are points in your life when you catch it really quickly. Like there are points where, I'll be able to, I can drop in seconds now. But there's also points where no matter what I do, I can't, and then I just sit anyway, even if my thoughts are running wild and whatever, just because, it's not going to happen that way anyway on that day. Actually, I'm starting a new practice lately. So, I haven't shared this even with Mary Jane. And so for another program, I'm actually kind of moderating. Um, I've been basically sitting, well, I thought it was going to be in silence, but right now it's listening to a healing mantra. And I'm doing something creative. I happen to be like drawing or coloring or something each day for 20 minutes. And I feel very unsettled. Like I've done it for like a good number of days this week. And this morning I actually thought to myself, Zara, I thought to myself, I'm really not enjoying this. And it was actually kind of funny. I actually thought to myself, because I love to do both. And I don't know whether it's just a new habit I'm trying to develop and something that I think is going to be very worthwhile. And I thought that exact question is how long do I give it before I kind of say, okay, maybe I should try something else before I, move on and try another practice. And maybe not a different time of day, because I'm really geared at doing it early morning, but maybe I just need to do something else. And so it was really interesting because I think that that's what happens. One is we have to get used to it. There are days where we can't give up, and there are days we're going to feel like we failed totally. And then there are days it's going to be so easy, and we're going to think, and we get all kind of lofty, and we're like, oh, okay, I got this. And then the next day, you don't. And I think that's life because that's how life is, right? Is certain days we wake up and we're like, okay, this, I got this, and I'm doing okay. And then other days you get up and, one is like you don't even know why, and other days you know why. Like life, you just had a number of things come up, and life is just, you know, overly, full.
Yeah, like you were saying about getting dragged in and then laughing at yourself and thinking, well, why am I doing this? And that's what reminded me of this because I started this thing where I wanted to open up space for men to share. And I had this thing like, guys, give me a shout if you need me, like, when you get stuck or something. And I had a backup plan as I wanted them to learn to get to know each other a bit. And I found like halfway through this 1 hour session, like they were calling me. I was running up and down stairs and they were laughing. And then I was laughing at myself. And I thought, you know, I can't see this stepping away. Like I keep getting called in for different reasons. Even if I provided the information for them up front, they were still like, "Oh no, we need you back again." And I thought, okay, well, if that's the case, I need to make a change, right? If my presence is needed, how can I contribute to this so that they can learn, rather than have me running around like an idiot up and down the stairs, right? So
Well,
I did a bit of storytelling. I did a bit of storytelling, and then I took them back to my corporate days and I trained them on a method of how to dissolve that problem. So I thought, okay, that seemed to work. And that was 7 weeks of running up and down the stairs. And I don't know, maybe last night we had a bit of a breakthrough, but I was just wondering, like, yeah, how long do we, how long do we keep on trying, doing the same thing, being patient, waiting for them to step up? Maybe something's missing. Can we say that, Jan? Like something might be missing?
absolutely. I mean, I think that's, you might come and when you sit in quiet in that silence, if you in that inner knowing, and you'll just say to yourself, okay, this just isn't right. That's how I phrase it. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not right, and it's not right at that time. And one of the things that you mentioned, Zara, kind of triggered something in me as far as a post that Mary Jane did this week, and that is on healthy boundaries. And so I think that in your circumstance with the men's group or whatever is setting boundaries of like, okay, these are the times I'm available and I want to be here, but setting, conscious and sort of, active boundaries, and like any boundary being, steadfast and being able to commit to it so that all of a sudden the boundary's broken, and then the credibility to me is then, or the trust is somehow broken. Um, and you have to reestablish that or whatever. But I do think that it does require patience because and yourself, like I know, like basically I know when I'm kind of bailing too soon. And I'm sitting there and like, even if and then all of a sudden I'll say to myself, like, it's kind of like I know I'm feeding myself a load of I don't want to use negative words on the show, but I know, it's kind of like, oh, you're telling yourself a story. You're like, okay, kind of like Jan, get real kind of thing. Like we know ourselves pretty well. We think we don't, but we actually do.
Yeah, I love you said that, Jan. I mean, one of the main reasons I set this up was because of the boundary, because the DMs were getting silly, okay, or the one-to-ones were getting really silly. So I said, okay, I'm going to get a group of them together, and I'm only available on this time. And, call me. Like my husband was even there, so they could call me through him. There was only like that 1 hour a week. And I wanted to get to the bottom of what was needed. Like, what is it? Like, how can I help this group move forward and collaborate? And I thought a lot of the teachings we've been trying to do on the open platform haven't been reaching them. So, how else can we reach them to help them move on to the next stage? Because that's what they really wanted. Like, they wanted my help. I can't be everywhere, right? So I thought, okay, how can I do this more efficiently? And I thought maybe they could help each other. That was the initial thing, but it turns out that they couldn't really. It's like they needed that woman's almost perspective, Jan, to move it on to the next stage. So I do see a massive need for women hosting something along that line. And I think that's the kind of change I think I'll be looking to make next, training the ladies on how to do it. Because, yeah, like you say, I can't be everywhere all the time. And I do see a massive, massive need there.
Yeah, and I think that, that's different. Like when you're trying to figure out and maybe it's a different method of trying to figure out what people want. I mean, maybe it's something like a survey or, um, something that they fill out or something just so in any way, not saying that you don't do what you're doing now, but just something to add in that's fairly easy and seeing what happens because it doesn't hurt. So maybe it's doing something like that to figure out what's going to best support the group.
Yeah,
Uh,
the issue is, Jan, that when people aren't aware that say they're lacking in emotional intelligence training, it's quite difficult to bring that message home unless they get to a point of, say, triggering, and then it's almost too late. So the storytelling is almost like reenacting a situation which almost brings out a trigger for them to have the awareness that, okay, maybe I need to handle this differently because that's going to result in a catastrophe if I did what I wanted to do,
Yeah,
like
I
how I'm
mean,
feeling
or
now.
however best is the way to get the message across. I mean, you know, most of you know that, Seamus and I collaborated on a book that came out, and we're actually collaborating on another with five other wonderful people. And originally, when the group met, we met for, okay, I don't know how long I was in the group, probably close to a year, and we were trying to decide what we were going to do next, like what it was moving forward. And we actually had a few people join, and they were like, go coaching, and we should develop workshops and classes and all this other stuff. And something about that didn't resonate. And that's when we decided to collaborate on the book. That was going to be the way that we got the message out of what we were trying to give to the world or trying to help people with, to help people to become aware of certain things in their own life and recognize that we all have the same experiences based on our, being a human being. And I think sometimes it's just navigating and being patient enough to be with the group so that you can figure out what is the best way forward. And that doesn't necessarily have, I mean, it took us like a year. And then these few people joined about the coaching, and we were like, no, that's not it. And sometimes you need to hear things like that or to actually think of brainstorming on those kind of ideas to realize that's not really the best way for you all, for whatever that group is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think you mentioned brainstorming, collaborations, definitely key, especially if you're trying to figure out for like how a man sees it. Like, because I'm not a man, so I definitely need that help. You're right. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Anybody else want to share?
It was just an interesting perspective. Thank you, Zara, for bringing forward some of those thoughts because it's true, what we always go through that sometimes, like how patient do I need to be with this in order to see, but sometimes that's about for me, I know it's about um letting go of the control sometimes. For me, we're always trying to get forward and move forward, and we don't always know the right way to proceed, although we like to think we do, or maybe that's just me. And um, sometimes it's true. I liked, Sarah, how you were sharing that when you were in and took time for in the stillness practice to sort of reflect, and it sort of brought forward the creativity. And that's very true because sometimes we need stuff going on around us, and that sparks the creativity. And sometimes we need the stillness because sometimes the noise is just a lot, and it's really hard to to move through that sometimes, or sort of like block our ears, or you know put on our headphones and say, please just shh for a minute. Sometimes I'm saying shh to myself because my brain's going in a whirlwind. I know Jan has this challenge sometimes too, so hopefully we're not alone.
Mhm. And then this is I mean, what you're sharing, Mary Jane, is the root of, and what Zara originally shared with her, that quiet being like all of a sudden she was writing, is the reason for our workshops that we do,
Yes.
was to allow people a little bit of space to be able to then get creative. Because I do think that when we are so busy doing and so busy in the outside world, I mean, creativity comes from the heart, it comes from within. And when there's too much noise outside or inside, we can't do that. I remember one of my least favorite places I ever, it was there for a conference, so I'll, I'll clarify. I was at Disney World,
Oh,
and I remember that exact feeling of I was speaking at a conference in Disney World, and so I was staying at one of the hotels and everything, and there's noise everywhere when you're there. You get on buses and there's like pumped in music and videos on, and you get off and actually you're walking these paths, which look like they're really beautiful and whatever, like, beautiful shrubs and everything near the hotel. And then I'm like, wow, the crickets are really loud. And then realized that it was actually piped in, like they weren't natural. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I have such a headache. Like, all I want is silence. And, and it was just so dramatic to me of like how much that just so didn't resonate with me. That's why I think I love, when I went on retreat and we were by the ocean in Mexico, there's nothing like getting up in the morning and hearing the sound of, let's say, water or nature, as opposed to hearing the sound of pumped in, crickets.
I'm just laughing because I was using crickets in a different sense recently, where I was saying it's like, but that's also not being patient too. It's like, oh, it's like, well, the content is out there and it's very important, and in the sense which it is, of course, but it's like, but all I hear is crickets. So it's very funny how I was like, how that expression, being
Yeah.
always here as crickets
Crickets.
can mean like there's nothing happening. What's happening? And then there's the other side going, I just want to hear real crickets.
That's right, real ones, as opposed to the ones that are in my mind. Um, but yeah, but it's so true that really, I mean, I really felt it. That kind of very much sound, like over sound kind of thing. And
Overload.
so that's why I think when I drive a lot, and one of the things I actually have days where I don't listen to anything when I drive. It's just, I'm in the car, it's completely silence. Some days I have music on and that differs, but there's some, yeah, absolute sensory overload, I feel. And I think that when we can kind of turn down the volume on that, that's when creativity flows, or that's when what we were talking about, that's kind of like an active form of non-action. When I sit there and I consciously don't turn on a radio or listen to a podcast when I drive or an audiobook. I'm like, oh, okay. And there are days, like I said, I do, but there are days that I'm just like, not today. I really don't want it. And, and then there are days I turn it on and then know that it's a mistake, being able to be okay with all of that. But I think it depends, and it speaks to like that self-awareness and that looking at what you need on a given day, which sometimes you don't know until you try it. And then you're like, okay, that was a mistake. Not a bad mistake, but that wasn't what I needed today.
And we're not gonna call it mistakes anymore. We're gonna call it learning.
Learning. Thank you, Mary Jane. I love that. Thank
It's
you.
all about flipping the script.
That's right. That's right.
It's like it's just like we say, there's no winning and losing. There's only winning and learning. Um,
Right.
you
And I
know,
like that. It's not mistakes, it's just learning.
yes. And Darlene, I love that, leaning into something. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what it's all about. It's so
Yes, tree. Or the leaning
like it.
tower pizza, whichever.
Yes. Yes, that's I read an interesting article about the Leaning Tower of Pisa not too long ago. How they spent a lot of time trying to fix the lean from like the furthest point or whatever. They put up all this structure trying to like support it, and finally recognized that it wasn't going to work because it was they had to go back to the foundation. Talk about like a metaphor for life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Got to go back to the foundation to fix the lean. I was like, oh my gosh, the story of my life.
Oh, that's funny, Dan. Mine too.
Go back there to fix the lean. Zara, did you want something? Want to share something else?
Yeah, I did. So it's kind of like a mixture on the whole Tower of Pisa being crooked and foundations and silence is key and all that stuff. And learning, talk about mistakes. You know what I did discover? That I can actually get into that state much quicker if I'm in my peripheral vision. And it's like it takes a few seconds. There was an exercise I learned to do through the Public Speakers Academy, which was a whole bunch of squares that you just focus on until like you see the pattern they want you to see, basically. You know, those kind of exercises that you go, oh, do you see this or do you see that? And once I recognized that's all I had to do, I was like, why was I sitting on the sofa for 2 minutes being quiet? Because I do this thing naturally. I just didn't know I did it. And I get into that mode when I'm like sharing a story with my friends. So this is like when you do things the hard way to figure out what you've been doing. I wanted to ask you, Jan, what's your shortcut to getting into that flow state, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I mean, so first of all, I love your story. And there's a practice also before I forget. There's a practice of, let's say, I'll be walking and I'll look at the trees and I'll look kind of outside the trees so that the trees disappear. And so it's very similar, or the fact of like looking for all the different shades of, let's say, green or orange in well, I'm out for a walk, especially now because we're having the most spectacular autumn here. And so it's like looking at all the shades of orange that you can see kind of broadens your perspective a lot. And so in that way, it creates a lot of space and you're not limited by boundaries. Like, I mean, in that way, like you feel free and kind of spacious. And so that's a practice that I've done a number of times. Uh, and how do I get in? I really closing my eyes is, one of the things I do. And I think that's actually because it turns off the visual, sort of sensory, um, trait or sensory, aspect
Overload.
within us. Obviously, I'm not shutting my eyes while I'm driving. So if I get quiet there, thankfully. But I'll close my eyes and literally I just focus on my breath. Like I can get really still and really quiet very quickly, like within, a fraction. Like if I close my eyes now, I could get there in a moment. But that it wasn't always like that. And there, like I said, there are days when I do it and I know it helps, but I'm not there. But I just know it helps anyway. And so I'll give an example. Mary Jane and Darlene know I had to take my dog Tonka to the ER on Wednesday, to the emergency vet in the morning pretty early. And obviously, in that circumstance, I'm like sitting in the waiting room with him and I'm sitting in the exam room with him. And I'm like trying to get quiet. I'm trying to get to a place of stillness, of like calm. And was I stressed? Yeah, I was scared out of my or whatever. But still, I mean, I'm sure what would I have been doing otherwise? I either would have been on my phone excessively, just trying to stay busy, focusing on him, obviously that which I was doing anyway. But it was just this ability of like saying, okay, well, I'm going to focus on my breath because at least that's somewhat productive, like helping me in some way. So yeah, and Al, finally, I was waiting. I wanted my acronym for today.
Yeah, the acronym of stillness. So the S stands for silence your body and mind. And C stands for take deep breaths. Then I will be ignore outside distractions. And L will be letting go of your worries. And the second L will be live in the present moment. N will be notice the world around you without judgment. And E will be enjoy the moment. S will be see things as they are. And the last S is secret to inner peace. So that's the stillness in us. actually we enjoy and embrace every moment in our lives. Thank you.
Outstanding, Al.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was very, very beautiful. And as usual, we encourage you to share it in the chat if it feels good for you to do that. But yeah, beautiful awareness. Thank you, Al, for sharing that with us. I like, Jen, how you were speaking about walking in nature and taking in the colors, because of course here too we're having the change of seasons with the color changes on a lot of the trees. Um, and it is true because like when if you focus in on a specific color, it becomes more like it's calming for the mind, because when you're looking at it, it's like you're looking at it from an overview perspective. I don't want to say with detachment, but it's kind of like you're observing, I guess is the word that it is. It's just observing it in its entirety. And then of course there's also the times where we want to bring the focus back inside, like you were doing when you were sitting in that waiting room worrying. It's just to take that time to breathe and focus in on that, because sometimes even in the stillness, that's one thing that's hopefully a constant, is the breathing in and the breathing out. It's a continuation, and so it's a calming stillness to focus in on. So it's true. And at given the day, I have the same things, like where it's like some days it's like it's easy to drop into that space, and other days I'll be sitting there thinking, okay. And there comes the patience again.
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite things, I mean, I'll do this anyway, whether Tonka's well or not, is matching my breath to his breath. So watching his rise and fall and matching my breath with his, which is a beautiful practice. And obviously, I always feel like, it's also energetically very connecting. For Seamus, it's true coherence. So it's heart coherence. And so it's really a beautiful practice, which I've been carrying through this week. But I love what you shared. And it reminds me, Mary Jane, of, that whole idea perspective of, my love for art, and which has been forever, and looking at a painting close up versus stepping back and looking at it from afar. And it's the same idea for me when I go out and I look at something and I see whatever, I see an object out there. And then all of a sudden, I kind of broaden my perspective and I see multiple trees or multiple houses. And it just gives me, it's like, oh, okay, there is, as much as there are the details, there's also such a broadness and such an openness and spaciousness to it all. And it also reveals to you how everything is connected. Like, you can look at one tree in a forest, but you can also look at the forest and realize how all the trees are connected. That they have this web and this communication and this forest, um, community of trees, which are communicating energetically and physically through their own networks. And so it gives you a little bit of idea of a broadness of looking at the world and realizing that, as much as I feel like individual, like I'm one drop in the ocean, I'm also the ocean in that one drop. Thank you, Rumi.
Yes. And absolutely. And it's very true. And yes, it is fascinating to know that even in what we perceive as stillness, perhaps, in a forest setting, it sometimes seems like stillness in the sense that we're immersed in nature, but at the same time, below the surface, in that stillness, there's communication and energy happening between the trees themselves, and in fact, connecting to our energy as we go into their space as well. So, um, because we are all connected.
Absolutely. I mean, the Heart Math Institute did some really interesting work with trees and networking trees and looking at the energetics of trees with people who would go in and actually like show appreciation for those trees. And then also you have a whole thing that I read about Reiki and plants and Reiki and trees, and then that whole aspect of life force energy and the fact that, the trees thrive and flourish. And I think you see that with people who are, let's say, real plant people, that the animals, I mean, the plants in their environment, and the animals do too, thrive based on that energy.
Absolutely. What a beautiful conversation, and just love that we're all been um and Austin saying Olga and Druid study as well. Yes. Absolutely. Um yeah, just thank you all for being here. It's just a wonderful conversation, and it's nice to just sort of like hone in on the perspectives and reflect on them. So it's great being here and being part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Should we move into the meditation, Mary Jane?
I think it would be a perfect time to do that. I feel very complete in one sense, so it would be lovely to have the meditation to bring it home.
Okay, great. So find a comfortable position, whether seated or lying down. Allow your body to settle, to find its natural resting place. Feel the gentle pull of gravity grounding you, the surface beneath you, offering full support. Take a moment and clench your fists. And then stretch your hands out so your fingers spread and your palms are stretching. Both what we might call very active type things. And then consciously let your hands gently relax. So you relax them with an awareness. And you allow them to just be. So this is an active form of non-being. Now shift to notice your breath, not to change it in any way, not to shape it, but simply to witness it. The soft ebb and flow, the rise and fall, the natural rhythm that has always been there, asking for nothing, doing everything. And as you continue to breathe, bring your awareness to the space between each inhale and each exhale. That quiet pause, that moment of nothing and everything. This space is where non-action lives. It's not a void, it's a presence. A place where stillness moves softly, quietly, purposefully. Notice any impulse to shift, to fix, to adjust. See if you can simply observe that impulse without judgment, without following it. Allow yourself to rest in the act of conscious non-doing. Feel into how alive this stillness is, how the body breathes without command, how the heart beats without asking, how life continues to unfold even when we step back. You might imagine yourself like a leaf floating gently on a stream. You do not need to paddle or push. The current knows the way. Let yourself be carried, supported by the flow of something greater, something steady, something wise. If thoughts arise, greet them as passing clouds. No need to chase or hold them. Just notice them drift through the vast sky of your awareness. This too is non-action, the art of allowing. Feel how in this space nothing is forced. Every breath, every still moment holds quiet purpose. This is not laziness or withdrawal. It's aligned presence. It's listening deeply to what life is asking before responding. Now bring your attention to your heart. Imagine a soft warmth there, not a light, but a gentle living pulse, steady, grounded. Here lies your quiet wisdom, your inner knowing that movement can be graceful and stillness profoundly alive. Take a few deep breaths into this space, feeling both the calm and the quiet power within it. Allow yourself to rest in this truth. You do not need to force what is already unfolding. You do not need to chase what is already arriving. You are participating in the rhythm of life simply by being. When you're ready, slowly bring your awareness back to your surroundings. Feel the support beneath you once more, the air around you, the gentle beating of your heart. Know that even as you move through the world, the stillness moves with you, quietly guiding each step, each word, each choice. In stillness, we move. In non-doing, we act. And in allowing, we become whole.
Just before we close out this conversation today, a beautiful meditation, by the way, Jan, I'd like to share a poem by Shel Silverstein. It's called Where the Sidewalk Ends. There's a place where the sidewalk ends and before the street begins. And there the grass grows soft and white. And there the sun burns crimson bright. And there the moonbird rests from his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. Let us leave this place where the smoke blows black and the dark street winds and bends. Past the pits where the asphalt flowers grow, we shall walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and watch where the chalk white arrows go to the place where the sidewalk ends. Yes, we'll walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and we'll go where the chalk white arrows go. For the children, they mark, and the children, they know the place where the sidewalk ends.
Thank you all for joining us today. Please take a moment to connect with Mary Jane and I, everyone. Even if we're connected, I mean, take a moment, maybe have a conversation. We would love that. If you'd like, and you're not a member of our Spirit Born Imaginings, either LinkedIn or Facebook group, please let us know, or we'll pop the links in the notes or the comments section. Please join these groups for inspiration, guidance, and announcements of our events. And also know that each one of these Fridays is recorded and placed on our Spirit Born Imaginings YouTube channel. So feel free to like, share, um, subscribe if that feels right to you. We also have a survey that we put together that just requesting information on, as we plan for our workshops for 2026. So if you feel so inclined, feel free to, just let us know what you want going forward for 2026 as we dream up our workshops together. Um, on another note, we have a 4 workshop series that's beginning with our beautiful friend Darlene in probably a little less than a month. So it'll be 2 weeknights in November and 2 weeknights in December. We're doing a special offering for that where basically it's pay what you feel comfortable paying. Just, donate what you wish. So we'll be there for each one of us for those 4, and we would love to have you look for information on that. And did I forget anything, Mary Jane?
No, I think you covered everything other than we want to wish you all a wonderful weekend and week ahead, and wishing you many blessings and lots of love, and enjoy your stillness, your non-action.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We so appreciate each and every one of you and your energy that you bring here. Have a wonderful week.